And joining me now is the former Australian Army Chief, Peter Leahy, the man himself. Peter, welcome back to AIM Agenda. It's great to see you and such an instructive piece this morning. Just take us through it. Where do these concerns come from, and have you long held them?
Good morning, Laura. It's good to be back on Sky News and good to talk to you as well. I think there's a couple of problems here. And the first one is that we've got unknown strategic circumstances, which we're told is dire. We've got capabilities being acquired, but many of us think a bit slowly to meet the likely, clear and present threat. And at the same time, the problem is that we're not able to recruit the numbers that we would need to meet the government's aims to be able to man and woman this new equipment. So I think we've got to think very carefully about, first, the recruiting, and I'll give the government some credit. I think the mechanics of recruiting, they've identified some of the problems and they're working on them. I think there's a couple of things they could do in terms of bringing back the ready reserve and also looking at some form of GI Bill. So the mechanics are about there, but the problem is the sentiment doesn't seem to be there in people who would want to join up. And that's where I'm seeing a lack of national pride, a lack of national identity, but also a sense that people don't want to serve, they don't want to be involved in the sorts of things that the Defence Force has to do. So to me, that's the government's got to do some work there to change attitudes and sentiment in the broader population.
When I was growing up, we used to see these ADF ads. It was about having an exciting life and being patriotic and being part of a team. And we just don't seem to have that advertising and recruitment drive that we did in the past. There's also something, when you talk about diversity, equity, inclusion and quotas required, I mean, we just need everyone that wants to fight for their country to join the Defence Force, don't we? Or are these quotas getting in the way?
Well, I think we need some quotas, but the essence has
to be...
Quotas
for what, Peter?
Well, the essence has to be, Laura, that if you're going to do the job, you have to be able to do the job. I think an Army, Navy and an Air Force has to be broadly representative of the community that it serves. So if you're down on some areas, but don't ask people to do things that they're not qualified to do.
Yeah.
And I think Defence is roughly in that spot now. But I think the real thing we have to be careful about here is that where is that sentiment for Australia? I've written that I think there are too many identities and I think there are too many flags. Now, I don't mean the flags of Australia and the three flags that we identify with. Of course, for 37 years, I wore one flag on my shoulder, and I think that's the important thing. But if you go to Spring Street in Melbourne, and I guess somewhere in Sydney on a Friday afternoon, you'll see these protests, and they're regularly scheduled, and there'll be multiple flags at lots of other places. Yeah. So I think we need to focus on the Australian identity and be really careful that we're proud of Australia. And I get this sense at the moment that some people are embarrassed by Australia. I also get a sense that people are feeling a sense of entitlement. It's not about what you can do for your country, and we've all heard JFK and what he said, but it's what you can do for your country, not what they can do for you. I look at the ads for the ADF, and in some ways they look like an ad for a wellbeing retreat, or their lifestyle ads. Yeah. And I think we do need to get back to what it's like in a unit where there's pride and there's tradition and there's a sense that we're here to defend this country and, if necessary, fight for it. And I'm not seeing those in the ads at the moment.
Peter, do you think part of it really is maybe the more recent history and treatment of veterans? I've spoken to a number of veterans on this program after we had the Royal Commission into veteran suicide at a time where, I think people can see that these veterans have been treated poorly or they've been misunderstood in many ways. Surely that has harmed the recruitment process. Why would people join the ADF if they're going to be treated so badly on the other side? I guess that's the thinking.
I agree with the thinking. Some terrible things have happened, and good on the Royal Commission for having displayed, I think, a lot of courage, a lot of hard work, and they've come up with a good report. The challenge now is for the government to implement that. And I know that there have been negative attitudes about what's happened overseas, some of the illegal behaviour, some of the terrible things that have been alleged. But that's not the full ADF. The full ADF, the full Army, Navy and Air Force, is where people can make a difference, where people can contribute, and where there have been problems, they have to be rooted out. We have to be able to say that there is no place for unacceptable behaviour that would drive people to suicide. I think that the ADF that I know, the one that I left 15 years ago, is a good place to be. But it's also a place that knows it has to live to the highest standards of the ethos of the service, but also to the standards of Australia. And I'd like to think that people would say, hey, I know that they've done their job, they're rooting that stuff out at the moment, and it's a good place to join.
Well, Peter, it's so great to hear from you this morning. It reminds me, we've got to get you back on more often. Welcome back to AM Agenda, and it's great to get your insights as always.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Laura.